Welcome to part 3. Today is all about saving money on housing for your family. You're always going to need a house, and whenever a child comes, you may need a bigger house, but you shouldn't be working all your days to pay off a house. So let's talk about how to save money on housing expenses. Let's get started. Please subscribe to stay up to date on this series, as well as our other videos on money, minimalism, travel. We publish a new video weekly. So I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds on how to save money on every little thing when it comes to housing, but we're going to talk about the big stuff. If you have enough big wins, you'll save enough money to negate any of the small things you may be overlooking. But you should still look into those and try to save money any way you can. Anyways, buying versus renting. Buying is not always the right answer. You don't have to buy your first starter home just because you're a new family and that's what Americans do. This whole idea of your house being your biggest asset is kind of silly when you think about it. It's becoming more and more common knowledge that a house is more of a liability than an asset. Investment property is an asset, but the home that you live in and have to maintain and pay a mortgage on is much more of a liability than an asset. Sure, it most likely will appreciate in value, but it doesn't always, and there's a good chance you're going to be paying 2 or 3 times the home's cost in interest. I'm not telling you not to buy a house, I'm just saying you have to look at some of these things, and people want to say that buying is always the right answer, and it's definitely not always the right answer. Think of a home more like a classic car. It's a liability, but it's also kind of a savings account. Given the interest on a loan, there's a good chance that you're not actually going to profit in the end, but you will have a lot of money in that home, so it's more of a savings account. But if you think about how much you paid in interest, you're probably not going to actually profit. You're just going to have a bunch of money sitting there. And while I do advocate getting the shortest term loan you can, if you do get a mortgage, try for the 15 instead of the 30. Even with a 15-year loan, this is still probably going to be the case. But of course, it depends on the home you buy and the location, where you live in the country, all that stuff. I understand that. And I'm not saying you shouldn't buy a home. I'm just saying that you need to see a home for what it is, a liability and not an asset. So should you rent or buy? I'm going to link a New York Times article below that actually has a calculator in it. And it depends on where you live. In some parts of the country, it makes a lot more sense to rent. In some parts of the country, it's actually a lot cheaper to buy, but it depends on where you live. So check that link out in the description and use that calculator to see what's best for you. And if you look up articles about this, there are going to be people out there who are passionate and telling you that you should never buy a home. They say that it's always too expensive and you're always going to be better off renting. And you're going to find just as many articles saying the same about the opposite, that it's always better to buy and you should never rent because you're throwing your money away. Neither of those things are true all the time, but it depends on your situation and your location. Now let's talk about choosing an affordable home. Most Americans buy much more house than they need. Just because you qualify for a $500,000 loan, or just because you can make a $5,000 a month payment, doesn't mean you should be spending that much or paying that much for a home. So yeah, you'll want to choose a safe area, but you also want to try to choose a fairly inexpensive area, and finding both of those is kind of where the happy medium comes in. You may have to get a little bit outside of town, you may have to get in the suburbs, it depends on where you live, but this is a big decision, so you need to do your research and make sure you're making an intentional purchase. When it comes to the size of your home and how you use your home, get creative. Younger kids can definitely share bedrooms, especially if all they do in it is sleep, and older kids aren't necessarily entitled to their own bedroom just because they hit a certain age. I would encourage the idea of only sleeping in the bedroom, because that's a good idea to take into your adult life for several reasons. And definitely don't encourage the idea of kids staying in their bedroom all the time and never being part of the family. When you see the way we've set up our kids' bedrooms in the past, we have 5 kids, and a lot of times we've set it up almost like a hostel in the different places we've lived. So choose an affordable home and get creative in how you use your home. That's all for today. I didn't want to make this video super long. I'll link some articles that I've written and other articles on saving more money on housing costs, but the buying versus renting and the choosing an affordable home, those are the 2 main things you need to think about. Please subscribe for more videos in this series on saving money on everything for your family, and on more videos that we do on money, minimalism, travel. Check out my book, Intentional Children. I'll put a link in the description below. It's all about kids when it comes to money and mindset. That's all for today. I will see you next week.